All right, so breaking news coming out overnight this morning, January 3rd, 2026. Take a look at this post coming out from Donald Trump on Truth Social. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump, January 3rd, 2026, 3:21 a.m. So we're going to be taking a look at the video footage as the information is pouring in that Venezuela was hit overnight by the United States. Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, has been captured. President Donald Trump confirming this on social media, and it is all over the news headlines. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest so that way you can see it for yourself. And if you appreciate the live updates, don't forget to take a quick second, hit that thumbs up like button, subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? And with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at what's been coming out just this morning.
It is 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and if you are just waking up this morning, we are following breaking news. President Trump announcing the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro overnight in a large-scale U.S. military operation.
Attorney General Pam Bondi confirming Maduro and his wife have been indicted in New York on drug and weapons charges. The couple, quote, will soon face the full wrath of American justice.
It comes after explosions rocked the capital of Caracas and surrounding states. Early this morning, President Trump is expected to hold a news conference from Mar-a-Lago at 11 a.m.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, where the commander-in-chief has been spending the holidays. Hey, Lucas, what more can you tell us this morning?
Good morning, Doc. For weeks, President Trump had pledged there would be strikes ashore in Venezuela, and that's exactly what happened in the pre-dawn hours, where the National Mission Force Special Operations Forces were launched, likely from the USS Iwo Jima offshore, after the Air Department, the jets and helicopters on board had been moved to Puerto Rico. Those forces, the strike force, assaulted Maduro's compound in the pre-dawn hours after those airstrikes from U.S. military aircraft took place in Caracas around 2 in the morning Caracas time, 1 in the morning East Coast time. And President Trump posting to Truth Social after Maduro and his wife had left the country. I'll read it. The president posted, quote, "The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter." And we heard from Venezuela's leader just a day ago, guys, in a car, of a dash cam video saying he was open to a deal with President Trump. He said he would be open to combating the drug trafficking. Recall for many days now, there have been increased sanctions on Maduro's regime. His regime had been called a cartel, had been sanctioned as a foreign terrorist organization. We'd seen dozens of strikes against drug boats in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. And then this morning at 2 in the morning, we saw this dramatic airstrikes, likely from F-22 fighter jets, stealth fighter jets. Also recall those F-35s that have been moved to Puerto Rico, likely taking part in the strikes. We saw B-1 bombers, a flight in the Caribbean just last evening. It's not clear if those also took place. We also, as you can see in the video coming up, dozens of U.S. Army helicopters, likely from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Those are the Night Stalkers. Those are the world's most elite pilots that would have taken the strike force into Caracas to detain Nicolas Maduro. This appears, from the American side, to be bloodless. It appears all aircraft were able to successfully execute their mission, and all American military personnel, those elite Tier 1 forces from the Delta Force, the Ranger Regiment, and perhaps SEAL Team 6, all made it out of the country in one piece. And let's not forget, this was a showdown between President Trump and Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. And as Elliot Abrams told me a few weeks ago, there can only be one winner, and President Trump doesn't like to lose. And that's what we saw in these strikes, guys.
So obviously for the past couple of weeks, Maduro has been looking out and seeing the most advanced flotilla in world history parked outside of his country. It's probably been a little bit nerve-wracking for him. But obviously, the operation, this operation was successful and is over. But I don't think that we're necessarily going to see the USS Gerald Ford pull anchor and leave the region anytime soon.
Your house has more logins than people. Movie night, homework, gaming, video calls. With Easy Fiber.
Doesn't appear that way, Charlie, although it is worth noting that Ford has been at sea for 6 months, deploying back in June. She was moved from Europe to move to the Caribbean, part of what the Trump administration has said repeatedly, and with this new national security strategy, that the focus would be on the Western Hemisphere. We saw in the new national security strategy that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth unveiled at the Reagan National Defense Forum. And you're right, we've seen this huge buildup of U.S. military forces in the Caribbean. The USS Gerald Ford Strike Group, not just the aircraft carrier and squadrons of F-18 Super Hornets, but also the USS Iwo Jima amphibious ready group with thousands of Marines and, of course, dozens of attack helicopters. It's likely those Night Stalkers, the elite pilots that flew the strike force into Venezuela, were based aboard Iwo Jima. We also saw dozens of other warships in the region as well, armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. And this buildup clearly had an impact on Nicolas Maduro. That's why in that interview, that's why we likely saw him almost pleading to the Trump administration for mercy. And perhaps this operation had been planned for a number of days. Remember, we had the strike in Nigeria targeting ISIS forces on Christmas Day. We've been hearing something was in the works for the past few days, and we hadn't seen President Trump on camera in the last few days. The last time we heard from him was New Year's Eve, Charlie, when a reporter asked him, "What's your goal for the new year?" And the president said peace, Charlie.
Lucas, with Maduro being gone, taken into U.S. custody by the DOJ, it leaves his vice president, who we've only heard from on state TV, saying that they wanted proof of life of Maduro and his wife. Have you gotten any more information on what is going on there? Do we have any indication of what is happening? Will there be a regime change?
Well, President Maduro is no longer running the country, and that statement from the vice president of Venezuela confirmed what President Trump said about Maduro and his wife had been removed from the country. We did hear from President Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi. If you could pull up that statement on X, I can read that for our viewers. Pam Bondi wrote, quote, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. Now, it's notable, Doc, when you asked what comes next in Venezuela. Senior official who used to be posted at the Pentagon just told me recently that there are 25 to 50 Venezuelan generals that have bank accounts in excess of billions of dollars, not millions, but billions. You have to wonder if any kind of opposition leader like Maria Corina Machado were to come to the country, would those generals support her new leadership or whoever is designated by the Trump administration if they can make that happen in the country?
Well, you know, that's such a great point to raise, Lucas, whether or not these generals would trust someone like Maria Corina Machado, because the Cartel del Soles, Cartel of the Suns, is specifically named that because the epaulets, the sun-like shaped dressing on the generals' uniforms, that's where they got it. The reason why they were given that name is because the military is the cartel. That's what ultimately Nicolas Maduro is being indicted on in terms of running a cartel organization of narco-terrorists. You mentioned, though, Maria Corina Machado. Here's a little bit of what she had to say on Fox and Friends. Watch.
I completely trust the strategy President Trump is developing and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They know very well with whom they're dealing with. This is not a legitimate president. This is the head of a criminal structure that was already defeated in a presidential election by landslide. So they know how to deal with these kind of individuals that are criminals, narco-terrorists. And I believe that Maduro will get a very clear picture of what are his options and what's the future for Venezuela.
What would be your message to Americans who are worried that this could become another costly foreign entanglement for them?
I believe it's exactly the contrary. Maduro started this war. President Trump is ending this war. A transition to democracy in Venezuela will make the Americas, including the United States, safer, more secure, and more prosperous. Because Venezuela, our country, has been turned into that safe haven for all those enemies, forces that want to undermine the institutions of the United States and also kill people in Venezuela and in your country. So we are solving and dismantling a criminal structure that has produced great pain and turned our country, our nation, into the best ally of the United States, a security shield for the Americas, and a huge opportunity for energy security as well. And one thing very important, Rachel, millions of Venezuelan migrants will come back home the day Maduro goes.
So that's what Maria Corina Machado had to say back in November. Is it your sense, Lucas, that at this press conference in just a few hours at 11 a.m., that we may learn more about whether or not the Trump administration is putting its backing behind someone like Machado, or if there's another plan for the governance now without Maduro?
Recall, Griff, that the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, received about 80% of support inside the country. What officials have told me in the past is, unlike Iraq and Afghanistan, in Venezuela, it's a very united country, both politically and ethnically. You don't have Sunni, Shia, Druze, Kurds in Venezuela. It is one people, and they are pretty united. In fact, just a few minutes ago on social media, you've seen people start to take to the streets yelling out of their apartments in Caracas. It sounds like many of the people in Caracas and in Venezuela are joyful today about Maduro being removed from office in this daring operation led by Special Operations Forces in the cover of night at about 2 a.m. this morning in Caracas. Certainly, this is something we're going to wait to hear from President Trump. Clearly, the Trump administration has game planned this out. This was just one part of the operation. Now it goes into the political realm, and who is going to rule the country, and will these generals allow any opposition leader to do it, or perhaps one of these generals might take over?
That's a great point. Not only are they one people, they also have a history of free markets and free self-governance. Lucas Tomlinson, we'll check back in with you as things warrant.
Thanks, Lucas.
And in the next hour, we will be hearing from Senator Tom Cotton, who was briefed by Rubio earlier this morning, and he'll be joining us in the 9 a.m. hour. Let's bring in Brett Velikovich, Fox News contributor, drone expert, and president of Power US. Great to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. So first off, just big picture, what do you make of all of these developments this morning?
Here's a hot take. If you have a message inside you that people are meant to hear, it'll never make the impact that it truly deserves until you...
Well, hey, good morning. I think Maduro just discovered that the U.S. doesn't bluff when it comes to protecting our citizens. I mean, he needed to go. He and his regime were not just drug dealers, they were narco-terrorists. And this was enforcement of the law against a dictator who was killing Americans for years, and deterrence for our country at the highest levels. And deterrence doesn't come from simply talk. It comes from bold, swift action like this. And what we just witnessed is Venezuela, the collapse of a regime that survived for years on corruption, fear, terrorism. Maduro didn't just govern his country. He turned a once wealthy nation into a narco-terrorist state. He exported instability across the region, and he hid behind sovereignty while bleeding his own people dry. And I think the explosions last night are just the sounds of justice finally catching up to him and his cronies, who have starved their people while lining their pockets with drug money, illicit oil deals. Now the Venezuelan government knows the gig is up, right? His capture exposes the fragility of their house of cards, which is built on rigged elections, repression, and frankly, the Venezuelan people deserve, better than bread lines and blackouts. And so hopefully with Maduro gone, there's finally hope for some democracy. And cheers to our administration, who just sent a clear message around the world. criminal regimes that traffic drugs, destabilize the region, threaten U.S. interests, they're no longer untouchable. And so I really believe the proper amount of power was applied here, quickly, intelligently, and it's going to restore deterrence across our own hemisphere.
Yeah, and Brett, with your obviously military background, you're well aware of what must have gone into this operation, which President Trump called brilliant in an interview early this morning with the New York Times. But it does appear that it was quite stunning, quite specific with precision, and it doesn't appear that any U.S. service member was injured or killed, or that the Venezuelan officials even responded.
Well, I'll tell you what, Maduro is lucky he was captured alive. It's very interesting. We haven't heard about more resistance during this operation, which just tells me, how easily this regime collapsed. Cheers to the president. Cheers to this administration. Marco Rubio, who no doubt was probably the architect behind a lot of this, because this appeared very deliberate and calculated of an operation. You had precision strikes, intelligence-driven operations that led up to this, which systematically stripped the regime of its ability to respond, its ability to communicate, control events on the ground. I don't think this was just shock and awe. This was meticulously planned. It was surgical pressure. By the time this decisive action arrived and occurred and they captured Maduro, his inner circle was already isolated. The command and control was probably fractured. This illusion of power, it just evaporated. And that's what modern enforcement looks like. It's not occupation. It's not nation building. We're collapsing a criminal regime, a criminal leadership, so that they have no options left. And clearly this involvement, this reported involvement of U.S. Special Operations Tier 1 forces, it underscores that this wasn't this brute force. It was a meticulous operation. You had quiet professionals operating with discipline, restraint, executing this mission flawlessly. And that's the difference between projecting strength as a nation and not recklessness. So the amount of precision, the amount of intelligence that goes into something like this, I can tell you, is just incredible. And it demonstrates that rogue regimes can be reached quickly and removed very surgically.
And I'm sure we're going to hear more about what went into the planning of this at 11 o'clock a.m. for the press conference by the president. Brett Velikovich, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yes, that's going to be in about an hour. We're hearing that President Donald Trump is going to be addressing the nation. And if you appreciate Donald Trump and what he is doing, drop a 47 in the comments for support for the Trump administration. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate him, drop a 47. But we have got a ton of video footage coming out. Let me go ahead and share with you more that's coming out here. And I'm going to share with you the latest because there are new feeds coming in with more information here. So let me pull this up. And also, if you haven't done so yet, please take a second, hit that like button for me. It helps support the channel while we are live. But let me pull this up right now, which is the latest update coming out here. Let me go ahead and move this over. Like I said, drop those likes if you haven't done so yet. Hit a 47 to support President Donald Trump and everything that he's doing in the United States of America right now. And I saw a lot of people saying they are very glad to see Maduro, another dictator, being overthrown. I think we're pretty happy to hear that somebody who has caused so much havoc and pain is being overthrown. The country right now, there is a lot going on in Venezuela. Let's take a look at this video footage so that way you can see the latest.
And Nicole, let me just go over here and so our viewers remember, we have captured a number of dictators throughout history. Now, you start in March of 2003, the U.S. went to war, Operation Iraqi Freedom, an invasion into Iraq to free the Iraqi people. And then by late November, up north of Tikrit, Saddam Hussein was captured. It wasn't without, obviously, a long war. That was less the law enforcement operation that we're seeing this morning in a full military operation. But then back in March of 1989, December of 1989, you saw that Manuel Noriega, leader there in Panama, and a narco trafficker was captured alive. It wasn't without some casualties, more than than 20 of our U.S. service members. But he was ultimately prosecuted on narco trafficking and money laundering charges and sentenced to 40 years in prison. And then a less known one, going back to 1983 under President Ronald Reagan, the effort capturing alive Hudson Austin, the leader there in Grenada, also not a clean operation. And so when you sort of put this in some sort of historical context, and we don't yet know the details, we'll learn at 11 a.m., and we don't know how the governance of who will take over. Will it be Maria Machado or others in Venezuela? Will Venezuela cease to be a narco-terror state? That's the hope, and clearly the goal of the administration. But as history plays out, this one is possibly going to go down as one of the most unique and successful operations tackling such a monumental task of eradicating the threat of narcotics, which you full well know, Dr. Sapphire, about the dangers that these drugs bring to the U.S., particularly young people.
Yeah, and as we start seeing specifically Democratic members of Congress coming out and criticizing the president, questioning the legality of this, while I can't necessarily attest to that, it's important to remind people that there was a humanitarian crisis for the Venezuelan people under the reign of Nicolas Maduro after Hugo Chavez, essentially 25 years of socialism, which drove the country into the ground. These people have been living in poverty. But here, from a United States standpoint, Venezuela and their role in the drug trafficking throughout the world, but specifically to our country, it's a national security issue here. And with over 1 million people having died from these drug overdoses, President Trump has made it clear that he is tackling narco-terrorism and he is putting America first. And part of that is you have to dismantle the Maduro regime. They need to face trial. They were indicted in 2020 for their role in narco-terrorism, and President Trump is just continuing to make good on what he has said. He was indicted. President Biden then went into the White House and unfortunately dismantled a lot of the pressure that President Trump put on the Maduro regime. And now President Trump, back in office, is saying, we're not negotiating with you, and this is what's going to happen. And he did it. And just like Operation Midnight Hammer, what we saw in Iran's attack on the nuclear supplies there, this was such a swift and incredible military operation. No American lives were lost. It happened in the matter of a couple of hours, resulted in the capture of Maduro and his wife, already on their way back to the United States to stand trial. This is what happens when you are a civilized nation. You hold people accountable.
Yeah. Maduro and his wife are currently in U.S. custody, and we probably could expect them to actually be in the United States at this point. It's only been a couple of hours, 4 or 5 hours since the raid occurred. And obviously, you know, looking forward at what the domestic politics are going to be, it's going to be very interesting to watch. I thought it was interesting talking to Brett Baer earlier about how, you know, Democrats can complain about this and raise totally legitimate points about whether or not you have to go to Congress to get authorization. I don't think you do for something like this, but it's a perfectly legitimate argument to be had. But if you, as you have those politics playing out alongside a trial where we are talking about the incredible damage that the drug cartels have done to the United States, I think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a political winner for Democrats to complain about this. The other thing that I think is interesting is when you go back to the wall, Griff, that you pointed out with in particular the 2003 removal of Saddam Hussein. You know, one of the reasons that President Trump managed to take over the Republican Party was because of his opposition to foreign entanglements that don't have an immediate America First implication. And he successfully did that, and then, of course, successfully took over the presidency, I think partly because of his credibility on that issue. And I think that he has successfully made the argument that figuring out a way to make Mexico a legitimate partner of the United States and South America and Central America, the rest of Central America, starting with a wall, stopping the invasion across our border, all of those things are key to his America First agenda. And so it's going to be really fascinating to watch how all that plays out. And I would actually argue that America First agenda, that argument that he has made, has won over a lot of Democrat voters that had been longtime Democrat voters who came over to the Trump agenda because of that argument.
Well, and President Biden at the time talked about doing exactly, working with these nations to make it safer. He implemented Vice President Kamala Harris, that she was tasked with that responsibility. Obviously, that didn't work, and under that weakness is when the Maduro regime grew, and now President Trump is doing what he wanted to do from his first term.
You know, it's interesting. I think hopefully at this 11 a.m. press conference from Mar-a-Lago that Brett Baer will anchor, hopefully we'll learn a little more about sort of the timeline in the planning that went in behind this. And on New Year's Eve, this clip of an interview from his car that Nicolas Maduro did with a local Spanish news outlet where he seems to want to maybe try and now negotiate a deal, come to the table. Here's a little bit of what he said. Listen here.
Y el gobierno de Estados Unidos lo sabe.
The U.S. government knows, because we've told many of their spokespeople, that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. If they want oil, Venezuela is ready for U.S. investment, like with Chevron, whenever they want it, wherever they want it, and however they want it.
Now, that suggests that he knew that something was coming, that his time was out, so he's trying to negotiate a deal. I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmer.
Wow. Let me know your thoughts. I usually don't share my opinion, but that's just, that video clip is just, he's driving in a van and he's trying to cut a deal with the U.S. saying, if you want oil, we can cut a deal. And at this point, I think he knows his days are numbered, and just, it doesn't even look serious. Like, he's driving in a van with a couple of guys, and he's, you know, I see people in the comments asking questions about China and Russia, and to me, it's like this looks like a joke to me. Like, it's unbelievable that he would try to negotiate with the United States at this point. I feel like, I don't know, there's certain nations that you take serious and other ones that you don't, and this to me it just is, I don't know how to describe it. I'm just kind of shocked at the video footage that they just showed right now. But we do know that, yes, they just went in, captured them. It was very precise. The United States lost no soldiers. They are captured. They're in the United States right now. We're hearing that they are going to be indicted. Donald Trump is going to be having a press briefing here in about 40 minutes. But news is pouring in on this. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more video footage. And if you appreciate Donald Trump not messing around with Venezuela and Maduro, just basically, to me, it looked like he is a dictator thug, and he captured him. He's not messing around. We heard that he was allowed to gain the traction that he has in the nation. They actually said they blamed Kamala Harris because she was supposed to be one of the ones, I guess, during the Biden administration that was dealing with foreign dictators. That's at least what we heard from Fox News right now. And they said now Trump's coming in and doing what he said he was going to do, and that is take out these individuals that are causing chaos in the world. He has overthrown Maduro today. If you appreciate Donald Trump, drop a 47 in the comments, hit that like button. Let's take a look at some more video footage coming out. This from ABC News. This is all over. I'm going to keep trying to keep tabs on the feeds so that way you can get the latest news coming out.
Targeted, including crucially Fort Tiuna. Fort Tiuna is the main military complex there, right in Caracas, and striking that has certainly would certainly be considered a major escalation. And now, given what the president said, we know that that has taken place. Well, according to the defense minister, helicopters were used in combat. There was helicopter gunships used on the part of the United States. And so he is speaking and has said that the government continues. He called the United States act criminal. He's asking for people in Venezuela to remain calm and to not panic. They want to avoid chaos and anarchy. He has announced a state of emergency across the entire national territory, and he has called up a deployment of all relevant military members there inside the country. So this is the first time we're really hearing a senior member of the Maduro government come out and talk like this, a very senior person, given that is the defense minister. But crucially, it's not Maduro Maduro himself. Given what the president has said, that's not a surprise. But this is the first time that we're hearing specifically from a senior member here.
Did the defense minister mention, have any information about how many injured, how many dead?
He did say, it's a good question. He said that because these attacks happened in an urban complex, which we know is true because we know that some of the main military bases in Caracas are in populated areas, even where there are hotels nearby. He says that they are currently checking on the numbers of injured or killed, but no word yet specifically as to what those numbers are.
Okay, ABC's Matt Rivers, thanks so much for that information. I want to go to Stephen Ganyard. He's an ABC News contributor. I want to get your reaction now that we've heard since the last time we spoke, now that we have confirmation about this move from the White House to get Maduro and his wife, capture them and out of the country. What is your reaction?
It's extraordinary. When we talked a few minutes ago, that we saw that there were videos from Caracas showing multiple helicopters, which presumably were U.S. Special Operations helicopters, MH-47 Chinooks. There appeared to be a attack by helicopters on some part of Caracas, showing rockets going into an area that appeared to be coming from helicopters. So this would seem to be a big operation that went after the main elements of the Maduro regime and the Venezuelan military. So we know that the strikes were against numerous military targets, to include communication sites up in the hills above Caracas. But most interestingly, all of that probably was a diversion, or at least something to distract the Venezuelan military while the special operations folks were in snatching Maduro and his wife.
All right, Stephen Ganyard, thanks so much for that. I want to go to Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz. Martha, what is your reaction?
I think this was something that people were standing by for, but certainly not to this scale. We had 15,000 U.S. forces in the region. We have seen these strikes again and again on suspected drug boats, been asked about regime change. Certainly, Donald Trump had made threats about that, had pressured Maduro, but I don't think anyone was expecting something this large scale, and to capture the president and his wife in this sort of operation. President Trump has given hints about the CIA operations earlier this week, but nothing to this scale, and this is something we just have to watch. We certainly have the assets in the region to basically do anything we want at this point, and standing by for any reaction.
Maduro isn't recognized as a legitimate leader for many countries, from many countries. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how this is being received, this capture and takeout of Maduro and his wife, taking them out of the country. How is this being received on the world stage?
Well, on the world stage, certainly. I mean, it's shocking in many ways, whether he's seen as the legitimate leader or not. It's shocking. I'm certain some countries will be happy about this. Obviously, President Trump is happy about this after all these warnings. But on the world stage, to have the United States of America go in and grab, as President Trump has said, capture the Venezuelan president and his wife is startling around the world.
Talk to me more about the significance of that.
I think the significance of that is obvious. You have the United States involving itself in military operation that we chose to do, that President Trump chose to do without provocation beyond these drug boats, and certainly Congress will have something to say about this as well.
What are your thoughts about economically how this could impact oil prices and oil supply around the world?
Around the world, I mean, this is a major route here. We know that if there's any kind of blockade, and I know Steve Gannard has been talking about this a lot of late, if there's any kind of blockade, what happens now? Who else gets involved? I mean, that is a key thing to watch here, what the reaction is from our adversaries, certainly, from Russia, from Iran, from others who go in and out of there with oil. We've already got that tanker that the United States was pursuing, and that is something that the world will have to brace itself for as well.
All right. ABC's Martha Raddatz, thanks so much. Again, President Trump confirming this moments ago that the U.S. launched large-scale strikes against Venezuela and that President Maduro and his wife have been captured and they've been flown out of the country. We're going to go ahead and return you to your regular programming. Actually, before we do that, let's get back to Selena Wang from West Palm Beach with more information, I think, about from the White House.
We're actually learning a little bit more. The president is giving a brief interview to the New York Times where he celebrated the success of the mission to capture Maduro, saying, quote, a lot of good planning and a lot of great troops and people. He went on to say it was a brilliant operation, actually. And when the president was asked if he sought congressional authority or what is next for Venezuela, the president said he would address those matters during his news conference at Mar-a-Lago this morning. The president earlier posting that news conference is going to be at 11 a.m. So, Allison, still key outstanding questions about all of this. For one, where are they taking Maduro and his wife? What will the legal charges be? Was Congress notified? Was the CIA involved in this? Who led this operation? And do U.S. forces remain on the ground? Again, this comes as we have seen repeated threats over the last several weeks and months and steady ramp up of U.S. pressure against Venezuela economically, diplomatically, militarily. The U.S. had positioned the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including the world's largest aircraft carrier, this massive show of force that was really directed at President Nicolas Maduro. But so much of that pressure was really primarily focused at sea, the U.S. striking these alleged drug boats. So the president had been threatening these land strikes. Certainly a surprise to many that it has gone to this extent. The U.S. also had been pursuing seizing oil tankers linked to Venezuela. And I just want to point out one quote from the White House Chief of Staff that was given in a series of interviews to Vanity Fair that was recently published. She had suggested that this entire campaign may actually be about regime change, saying Trump, quote, wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle.
With the president declaring this a successful mission, do you know, and I know you're not on the ground in Venezuela, but are there still strikes happening over Venezuela?
That is a question. I mean, if we look and dissect the president's post, he is speaking of this past tense, saying has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader. Typically, you would not want to be posting that it's been successful if you're still in the middle of the operation. So it appears that for now, the military action has been completed. But as I just mentioned earlier, still key questions. Do U.S. forces remain on the ground? Where do things go from here? We're really in uncharted territory, and it's also unclear who led this operation. Just a few days ago, President Trump revealed himself what we know of to be the first land strikes inside Venezuela. The president saying they struck a dock in Venezuela that he claimed was used by the cartels to transport drugs overseas. It was reported by CNN that it was the CIA that carried out that strike using a drone. And then Steve Ganyard has talked about why the CIA was used in that instance. It means the president doesn't need congressional authorization. Now what we're talking about here is an entirely different scale, a significant, a striking, stunning escalation.
All right, Selena Wang, thanks so much for all of that great reporting. Let's go back to ABC News contributor Stephen Ganyard. Stephen, I'm curious what the ramifications you see at this moment are, knowing that, the U.S. dipped in, took Nicolas Maduro and his wife, captured them, and flew them out of the country. What are the ramifications of this?
I think this may be the end of military action, at least for now. Again, so hard to tell because, the sun hasn't come up. We don't have any reports other than Maduro's out of the country. But I do think that because they have Maduro, that the U.S. has done what they've needed to do. They've neutered the Venezuelan military, and they have Maduro. And so really there's not much reason for any follow-on U.S. military action. And so the fact that the U.S. has snatched Maduro will probably put him on trial, means that this may come to an end before it escalates. So that's an optimistic look at where we are this morning. But given that Maduro's out, the regime will essentially fall. The U.S. has hit ports. They've hit barracks. They've hit airfields. They've hit communication sites. So all of this means that the Maduro regime has essentially been brought down. And so this could be it in terms of what we're going to see out of military action by the U.S. for quite a while.
How involved do you see the U.S. in a new regime in Venezuela?
Well, hopefully the U.S. has learned some lessons about putting new regimes into place, and that will be up to the Venezuelan people. We know that there have been several candidates who've been Democrats, who've been likely legitimately elected, but the Maduro regime obviously stuffed the ballot boxes to make it look like Maduro was the elected representative. So I think what's most interesting here is what happens next, and whether those Democratic, at least those leaders who see a brighter democratic future for the people of Venezuela, whether they are able to have their voices heard, and whether they are able to overthrow the yoke of the Maduro regime.
And the overthrow of the regime, many will say that this was, obviously unexpected, but certainly, way over the top than what many would predict. Do you think this was the best way of upending the Maduro regime?
Well, it's certainly the cleanest, and it means that there'll be less military action, hopefully, going forward, and that Maduro will be brought to trial for his numerous crimes.
How do you think civilians in Venezuela are seeing this move this morning?
They're probably shocked. I mean, everybody, as Matt Rivers was reporting, he was talking to people in Caracas. The people in Caracas in Venezuela certainly had a feeling that something was going to happen given the degree and the size of the U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, but they didn't know it would be this bold, this daring. I mean, this is going to be very interesting to figure out how the U.S. Special Operations Forces went in there. How did they snatch the Maduro and his wife? How did they get the intelligence, all of the rehearsals that would have to have gone into effect? Where did those helicopters launch from? Really just a stunning, amazingly successful, as of right now, operation by U.S. Special Operations Forces.
Very quickly, Stephen, what do you see the U.S. Congress saying, doing about this?
Well, they're not going to be happy. I'm not seeing any reports that Congress had been notified beforehand, and part of that may be that the president wanted to maintain operational security. I mean, if you're going to put Special Operations Forces on the ground in Venezuela and in Caracas, then operational security is absolutely essential here. And so maybe the notifications weren't done. The Congress is not going to be happy about that. But if this is the last of the military strikes, then maybe that it's all going to be a moot point.
Okay, Stephen Ganyard, thanks so much for all that great analysis. Again, President Trump confirming just moments ago that the U.S. launched large-scale strikes against Venezuela and that President Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of Venezuela. President Trump will be holding a news conference later today, happening at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to go ahead and return you to your regular programming. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. We're going to have a full wrap-up later today on...
All right, we've got more news pouring in on this. And if you appreciate Donald Trump capturing Maduro, this dictator who they said shouldn't have even been in his position, he stole the elections, and you saw him driving in a van with individuals essentially pleading to do a negotiation like he was in some sort of position of power when he knew that his time was up. If you appreciate Donald Trump handling this, and we had also heard that Maduro was allowed to get into the position of power that he was because during the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, who was supposed to be handling the foreign connection between them and the United States, allowed him just to do whatever she wanted. If you appreciate Donald Trump stepping in, taking care of business, capturing the president of Venezuela today, drop a 47. Now, you heard on ABC News that there are some that are saying that there was no congressional approval ahead of this, that there was concerns. Let me know. Do you think that this was wrong? If you think so, put it in the comments. Put a 46 if you appreciated the way the previous administration handled Venezuela. But if you appreciate the Trump administration essentially taking care of business, drop a 47 in the comments and hit that like button. Now, I also saw people commenting, and let me know your thoughts on this, about what is the position of Russia and China. Well, I pulled up some of the latest headlines so that way you can see what it is that is coming out here. And we can take a look at this really quickly as well. But there's more video footage. There are more updates coming in, but I want to share with you the articles so that way you can see. It says China strongly condemns the U.S.'s use of force against Venezuela, and Russia has harshly criticized U.S. attack on Venezuela, the capture of Maduro. Let's go ahead and take a look so that way you can see what's coming out. Now, this is all breaking news. Like I said, I haven't actually read any of this, so I'm going to be learning and seeing what's happening right alongside with you. Let's take a look here. It says Russia is offering stark criticism of the U.S. military attack on Venezuela, which resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. In response, Russia called for a full meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Now, this morning, the United States carried out an act of armed aggression against Venezuela. This causes deep concern and condemnation, Russia said in a statement from its foreign ministry. The pretexts cited to justify such actions are unfounded. Ideologized hostility has prevailed over practical pragmatism and over a willingness to build relations based on trust and predictability, Russian officials wrote nearly 5 years into the nation's own war in Ukraine. Russia, a key ally of Maduro's regime, said that it was crucial to prevent further escalation and to focus on finding a way out through dialogue. Wow. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. They say that this pretext cited to justify such actions are unfounded, despite all that's been going on for years, and that this is hostility that has prevailed over practical pragmatism and over the willingness to build relations based on trust and predictability. This coming from Russia, who literally will sit in meetings with Donald Trump and tell them, yes, we'll work on a peace deal agreement, and then waged the largest strike in their Russia-Ukraine war, which has been ongoing for 4 or 5 years now. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. What is causing, do you think that Russia is concerned, seeing that Donald Trump will go to Venezuela, pull out a dictator, and actually take him to the United States? Do you think Russia is concerned, yes or no? Or do you think it's more of an economic concern? Because without a doubt, Vladimir Putin is on a totally different level than Maduro, who is driving in a van pleading for some sort of agreement with oil when he knows that his time is up. Now, take a look. It also says, we proceed from the understanding that all the parties who may have claims against one another should seek solutions through dialogue-based approaches. We are ready to support them in this, the ministry said. Latin America must remain a zone of peace, as it declared itself in 2014. Venezuela must be guaranteed the right to determine its own destiny without any destructive, especially military, interference from the outside, it wrote. We affirm our solidarity with the Venezuelan people and our support for the course of its Bolivarian leadership aimed at defending the country's national interests and sovereignty. Russia said its embassy in Caracas, Venezuela's capital city, was operating normally and that it had no information about Russian citizens having been injured. Attorney General Pam Bondi said Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts, Bondi added in a post on social media platform X. Maduro had been in power in Venezuela since 2013. The Venezuelan Communications Ministry said in a statement that he had signed a declaration of emergency urging all social and political forces in the country to activate mobilization plans and repudiate the attack from the U.S. The capture of Maduro came just days after the Venezuelan strongman said that he was open to conducting negotiations with the U.S. regarding drug trafficking and oil. Maduro and Trump spoke over the phone in November. The attack will almost certainly heighten tensions between the U.S. and Russia, two parties that have been working to find an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. It has been taking place for more than a decade after Russia took over the Crimea and the launch of a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. Just this week, Trump held a meeting at Mar-a-Lago with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss a 20-point peace plan. He also spoke on the phone with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has widely been as an obstacle to the settling of the war. So there you have it, you guys. That is the response from Russia and also China China strongly condemns the U.S.'s use of force against Venezuela. It says China is deeply shocked by and strongly condemns the U.S.'s blatant use of force against a sovereign state and action against its president, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said here Saturday. It's reported that the U.S. launched military strikes on Venezuela, and Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that the U.S. has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife. They have taken and flown out of the country. Such hegemonic acts of the U.S. seriously violate international law and Venezuela's sovereignty and threaten peace and security in Latin America and the Caribbean region, the spokesperson said, adding that China firmly opposed it. We call on the United States to abide by international law and the purpose and principle of the UN Charter and to stop violating other countries' sovereignty and security, the spokesperson said. Sorry, I usually try not to share opinions, but it's just, it just makes me laugh to see these responses. Let me know your thoughts. The dictators don't like the fact that Trump has gone in and taken control of a dictator. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate Donald Trump, drop a 47 and hit that like button if you haven't done so yet. Now, in addition to that, we're hearing that there is going to be an address by the president here shortly. And he is going to be discussing more details about what's going on. Now, in addition to that, I'm keeping an eye on the live feeds here, and there is more news pouring in. So let me pull up the latest for you so you can see what is coming in.
Here's how you can take advantage of IUL to build generational wealth.
So let me pull this up real quick for you guys. I'm going to move it over to my screen, and you can see what is coming out here. Let me pull this up. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the latest coming out.
Chief political anchor and host of Special Report. And Brett, you'll be anchoring in just 2.5 hours the live press conference coming from Mar-a-Lago. But it is interesting, as you heard Chad talking there, and we've been highlighting some of the political reaction. It does appear that a large number of Democrats are really just leaning in. And we highlighted a little earlier Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, Democrat, saying that second unjustified war of my life. This war is illegal. It's embarrassing that we went from the world cop to the world bully in less than 1 year. There's no reason for us to be at war with Venezuela. And it goes on, you see there. But it's pretty clear that this isn't a declaration of war.
Yeah. Good morning again. I love Chad Pergram and a little bit of at war and not a little bit pregnant. He always has the great phrases. But I think that this is interesting, and this is going to be the subject of the 11 a.m. news conference. A lot of it. You'll get a lot of details about how long this operation was in effect and how much planning and how successful it was. But let's just boil this all down. There is a pending 2020 indictment of Maduro and his wife in the Southern District of New York, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, says that is where they will face justice with a formal indictment process and a prosecution. And, you know, this operation, to Chad's point, very well said, tracks almost exactly the 37th anniversary of the operation to take out Manuel Noriega in Panama. That was December 20th, 1989. Very similar operation. He was convicted of drug and money laundering. There was an operation to take him. He eventually went to Miami. He faced prosecution, had 40 years in prison as a result of that prosecution. In that operation, there was a significant military force on the ground in Panama. There are legitimate questions, as I mentioned before, about briefing Congress and the top bipartisan officials on the leadership and the Senate and House Armed Services, or rather intelligence committees. But this operation is going to track that Manuel Noriega operation as far as its legality. And it is a legal operation where there is an indictment pending for Maduro and his wife. And I just want to read from this legal framework of the original indictment and how it's phrased. And you can put up pictures of Maduro. Maduro helped manage and ultimately lead the Cartel of the Suns, a Venezuelan drug trafficking organization comprised of high-ranking Venezuelan officials. As he gained power in Venezuela, Maduro participated in a corrupt and violent violent narco-terrorism conspiracy with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC, a designated foreign terrorist organization. Maduro negotiated multi-ton shipments of FARC-produced cocaine, directed the cartel of the Suns to provide military-grade weapons to the FARC, coordinated with narcotics traffickers in Honduras and other countries to facilitate large-scale drug trafficking, and solicited assistance from FARC leadership in training an unsanctioned militia group that functioned in essence as an armed forces unit for the cartel of the Suns. In March of 2020, Maduro was charged in the Southern District of New York for narco-terrorism conspiracy to import cocaine, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. This is a detailed indictment that goes back to 2020, and this is a legal action that was supported by a military operation to protect those going in to grab him and his wife.
You know, as you pointed out earlier, Brett, there are plenty of legitimate questions about authorization and to what degree Congress needed to be consulted. But as a logistical matter, I would imagine that the Trump administration would make the argument that, you know, this was a successful operation. We got him where he slept under the cover of darkness. We did it in a matter of minutes or hours. Can you imagine if we had to go to Congress, especially with the fraught politics of today, and the danger that any sort of operation like that could have been leaked out? I can hear President Trump now sort of weighing in on all that.
100%. That's going to be his answer. You know, he's going to say Congress leaks, and he's going to, you know, say that is, you know, reason for the secrecy and what they were trying to do. And there will be sniping about it, largely from Democrats up on the Hill, saying we usually get informed, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as the big impact here, I don't think that the argument that Gallego makes about war and the authorization of military force is the same because of the legal justification. And Jonathan Turley, who's really good on all of this stuff, has a piece out now, and he's posted it. And he says, Trump does not need congressional approval for this type of operation. Presidents, including Democratic presidents, have launched lethal attacks regularly against individuals. President Barack Obama killed an American citizen under this kill list policy. If Obama can vaporize an American citizen without even a criminal charge, Trump can capture a foreign citizen with a pending criminal indictment without prior congressional approval. So I think that this argument is going to kind of go by the wayside. More important, I think, are the questions that they will face and the president will get at the 11 a.m. news conference about next steps. Who is leading in Venezuela? Does that person become the next target? How can you install the opposition forces? Has that been negotiated beforehand? What are the next steps? What are the next countries that you're concerned about? Colombia next door, Mexico. How does that play out? And I think that those are the bigger picture questions as far more than the process questions of congressional approval in this operation.
And just to pick up on that for a second, Brett, because that's such an important question about what happens next, because as Victoria Coates was telling us a little earlier, raising a great point, which is, will the generals, and some of them are among those in that indictment from 2020 that were accused and indicted for being part of running the Cartel del Sol that were working under Maduro, will they accept someone like Maria Corina Machado, who, as you well remember, won the Nobel Peace Prize? She then, in turn, dedicated it to President Trump for his efforts. You know, will they accept it? And if they won't, what sort of situation will we then have on our hands with regards to President Trump's effort to get the opposition party in power?
We're building some really exciting things, but our Scribe, we are so proud of it. It's the very best of AI tech.
Those are great questions, Griff. And I think that Machado probably knows who's listed in those indictments, probably knows exactly who is on the good side and the bad side as when it comes to the military people. And they'll have to clean house if they take over in that way. I think getting to that point A to point B, is really the big question here, and how long that takes and how the U.S. is involved. If I had to guess, we have a pretty detailed level of information about what's going on the ground. And anecdotally, you're hearing from Venezuelans already, as the sun has risen there, that posters of Maduro are being ripped off buildings. There's on social media video of people taking to the street and celebrating. There are intelligence officials who were said to just leave their posts once they heard the bombs dropping. So I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of courage when it comes to inside the old regime under Maduro, but we'll see.
Brett, do you anticipate any more arrests being made? As Griff just mentioned, it was more than just Maduro who was on the indictment. There are many more, including some of those generals. Do you think that the operation may not be over, maybe in terms of military strikes, but that more arrests will be made?
Another good question for the 11 o'clock. I think that there's I sense that there's not a lot of movement right now as far as getting back on the ground. I think they wanted this to be tactical and surgical, in and out, get the leader, and we should say not the elected leader, the disputed leader, and his wife out to face charges, and then see where the dust settles with the others. We have been on the ground dealing with opposition forces for some time, and I think you're going to probably hear Secretary Rubio and others talk to that level of planning in a couple hours.
Brett, I just want to add in here, literally 60 seconds ago, Vice President J.D. Vance has now weighed in on X, and he says this: the president offered multiple off-ramps, but was very clear throughout this process that drug trafficking must stop, and the stolen oil must be returned to the United States. Maduro is the newest person to find out that President Trump means what he says. And he adds, kudos to our brave special operators who pulled off a truly impressive operation. So there you have it. We're learning a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see more and more as the morning progresses. I think another big question is what happens with Cuba. They are, they really are tied to Venezuela. It's like their lifeblood, and you may see changes coming to Cuba. And is that next? If you look at the big picture, this could have a ripple effect in Latin America and on a number of different fronts. This is, structured as a legal operation because of the indictment, but it could be much broader than that, and we have to look at the implications there.
Yeah, I sort of ask it, Brett, and I think you're right about, this is a very interesting tweet. Because the line where Vice President Vance says that Maduro is just the newest person to learn that Trump's message is very clear that, quote, the drug trafficking must stop. And when I hear that, I think, what must Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, be thinking? What message does this operation potentially set up for her? Now, she has taken to social media seemingly condemning this by simply pointing to Article 2 of the UN Charter, talking about not, infringing on sovereignty rights of another country. We know from our Fox News reporting that actually Mexico has cooperated quite a bit with our federal immigration law enforcement and border patrol and the like. However, it's unclear that President Trump and President Sheinbaum have developed a really good relationship. Do you think that she must be wondering what this all means for her?
100%. I mean, the Mexican president, the Colombian president, I know you had the guest on who's running for Colombian president, and I think that all of those leaders have to be looking over their shoulder as far as what that means and where this goes and tying to the drug cartels. That's the ultimate thread here, is the drug cartels and the use of these different cartels to funnel drugs into the U.S., thereby making the case against these leaders. I'll tell you something here that wasn't going to say, but we were contacted through intermediaries to have potentially an interview with Nicolas Maduro in recent weeks. And we were in the process of kind of having back channel communications. They wanted me to come to Caracas. It was not feasible, and they couldn't make a decision. He was worried about security. I was talking to the U.S. About the possibilities, and then this all came to pass. But obviously, Nicolas Maduro saw that this was coming.
Yeah.
And, you saw that video of him in the car and doing that interview with the Spanish channel saying, I'll give you the U.S. whatever they want. He knew this was transpiring. And my wife was not into me going to Caracas either, but I was ready to go, guys. I was ready to go.
That's fascinating, and it really does give you a glimpse into what maybe he was thinking. And it does also make you kind of wonder when you look around and you see that there has been no help coming to the rescue for him, whether or not maybe he recognized that not only was he going down, but he was going down alone at this point.
I think so, and I think that you see these muted responses. I mean, they say that they don't have the authorization, and this is a threat to sovereignty. But it is not a big declaration from these world powers, and I think everyone knew that this action was getting ready to happen, especially on the legal front after that indictment, and that's what they were going to use to hang this on. And this trial will go forward. This prosecution. Likely, Maduro and his wife are going to face a formal indictment in the U.S. Southern District of New York, I would assume, in coming days.
Yeah. Well, we'll be watching that, and we will be tuning in at 11 a.m. this morning to watch your coverage of President Trump's presser.
And that is just 2 minutes away, you guys, and I have the live feed up right now. I am watching it, so as soon as that goes, as soon as I hear the volume on that kick on, we're going to be taking a look at that, because right now we're hearing that we are moments away potentially from Donald Trump doing the press release update on that. Now, if you want to see that, put yes in the comments. I've got it pulled up. They're saying 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is now 1 minute away. However, sometimes, as you know, they can be a little bit late to those. Usually it could be anywhere from 30 minutes late. So I'm going to continue to pull up information as we are having it roll in. We're starting to get new information as to what's going on, what's going to be unfolding here. We're hearing that he's being indicted. Pam Bondi gave us the updated information. They captured them, brought them to the United States. We have seen the response from Russia, from China, saying that they think that this is very disturbing. And if you think this is disturbing, drop a 46 in the comments for the previous administration, which we heard allowed the Maduro regime to thrive. And if you appreciate Donald Trump and the way he's handling this, drop a 47 in the comments. And also do me a favor, if you haven't done so yet, please take a second and hit that like button. But you guys, like I said, I have got right now the live feed up. I see all the yeses pouring in. It says that they're waiting for Fox News to go live right now. So I'm going to live stream it from Fox, bring it in so that way you can watch it. I've got the volume on here. So as soon as it hits, I'm going to go ahead and start playing it. We can all watch it together. But until that starts up right now, let's go ahead and pull up some more clips of what's going on. And like I said, drop a 47 if you support the Trump administration, drop a 46 if you support the Biden administration, and hit that like button for me if you haven't done so yet. But let's go ahead and take a look at some more information coming out here. There's more video clips. There's more updates going on. Residents in the city report power outages, helicopters overhead, and explosions were heard. This coming out just an hour ago. We're going to take a look at this. Like I said, until we get that live feed coming in. Once it does, I'm going to interrupt this and we're going to jump right to the live feed.
First, we want to bring in Geraldine Coles-Azokar, who is an NBC News senior producer. Geraldine, good morning to you. What can you tell us?
Good morning. I'm Venezuelan. I have a lot of family who still lives in Venezuela. My brother was woken up by the sounds of bombs. Our family home is actually in the same neighborhood as Puerto Tiuna, which is a big military base in the middle of Caracas. He says that they saw planes, helicopters flying overhead. They saw also some of the bombs being dropped in Puerto Tiuna. They saw the smoke, smelled it, and immediately within minutes of the first couple of bombs falling, they lost electricity. They don't have power still at the tower. And this happened around 1:30 in the morning or so.
Have you been able to get in touch with your brother, Geraldine, and any other family there? Are they safe?
Well, they're hunkering down in the house right now. So my brother lives with some of my aunts and uncles and a couple of my cousins. So they're hunkered down right now. I have an aunt in another part of Caracas who is also sort of like waiting in the middle of her living room, hoping and away from the windows because they don't have any idea, what else is going to happen. So there is some contact, but the communications are starting to become a little bit more spotty in the last couple of minutes.
And you did say that your brother in their home does not have power at the moment.
Correct, they do not. And it's in part because they don't have power.
Pardon me, I'm so sorry about that. Does their neighborhood that they live in have any sort of emergency services that they've told you about?
No. Not
and how far does your aunt, also in a different part of Caracas, reporting, do you know if your aunt has power?
She does, because she's in a different neighborhood, yeah. But she also said that she heard bombardment in another part of Caracas.
I see. What else have they told you from what they've heard, what they're smelling? Are you in current contact with your family right now?
Yes, I am still chatting with them via WhatsApp. Yeah, and we're in contact. They did smell the smoke, and they saw the smoke also from when the bomb fell. Yeah, and that's all the info I have for now.
I mean, having you describe the fact that they're so close to what's happening there in Caracas that they could smell the smoke when the bombs hit is a very powerful thing, very concerning.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.
There you have it, you guys. So we're hearing that they are out of power there. Kind of caught me off guard. That ended abruptly. I was in the middle of eating my bacon. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more footage here. They're calling him a thug. Maduro's captured, praised after U.S. confirms strikes against Venezuela. Now, in addition to that, let me know your thoughts on this. We heard that he had stolen the elections. The United States doesn't even consider him the president of Venezuela. They feel that he is a dictator that has overthrown the nation and is just essentially doing what he wants. Do you consider him a thug? If so, put thug in the comments. If you think that he's a legitimate president, put a P in the president. Put a P in the comments for president. Let me know your thoughts. But let's take a look at this. And like I said, I've got that live feed still running here, waiting to see when Donald Trump is going to be addressing the nation regarding the capture of Maduro today. Venezuelan president has been overthrown, and he is now in the United States awaiting trial. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Thanks, Chanley, and thank you, Lucas. Christopher Nixon Cox has had wide experience in international affairs. He is the grandson of President Richard M. Nixon. Joins us now on the telephone. Chris, this is, you have to say, an historic night. The United States government, the Trump administration, taking bold, decisive action, shocking and surprising by capturing Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia. They obviously are now, or probably in handcuffs, because he has been for 5 years under indictment for running a massive billion-dollar narco-terrorist organization. Your thoughts at this stunning move by President Trump?
Well, this is just, as you said, absolutely stunning. What a brilliant move by President Trump to decapitate the Venezuelan regime. What a brilliant operation that was run by our military, led by Secretary Hegseth. All credit to President Trump and our brilliant soldiers for doing this operation so efficiently, so well thought out. This is just an extraordinary night. And now I would say that after the success of this military operation, the real work begins, because Venezuela cannot become a Somalia in the tropics, so to speak. This is when the real work will begin to stabilize the country, to rebuild the businesses of the country, to rebuild the civilian infrastructure. That's going to be a very important next step. And then also there will be ramifications. The Venezuelan regime was propping up the leftist regime in Colombia. There's an election coming up in Colombia in the spring. That's going to be a very important election. There are ramifications in Tehran. I'm sure they're trembling in Tehran right now after watching what President Trump did in Venezuela. And there are ramifications in Russia and in Beijing as well. So this operation will live for a long time over the months and years to come. And this is a signature moment for the Trump administration.
Absolutely is. And one would think some of those plans are in place for Venezuelans' future. But let me focus on Maduro, who right now the president says is in U.S. custody with his wife flown out of the country. So that you've got to think that there was this special operation, SEAL Team 6 type operation on the ground that went in, overpowered and or perhaps killed Maduro's bodyguards. He maybe surrendered, was captured, is now in handcuffs, probably flown to the USS Gerald Ford, and at some point in the next few days may be arraigned in either New York, Washington, or Miami, because the president said that the operation was done in conjunction with the U.S. law enforcement. So in some ways, it's a U.S. law enforcement operation. Your thoughts, Chris, on the fact that we can try and we can bring to justice the enemies of America, the people who are accused of flooding our country and killing our citizens with fentanyl and drugs, and take such a daring, swift move in the overnight to bring someone like Nicolas Maduro, who we see on the screen, to justice?
Well, it shows that you can't hide from the United States. Anywhere in the world, we can get you. You never know when it could happen, but it will happen, and we will get the enemies of our country. Anyone who threatens the United States, this president will come and get. And I think that is a powerful message across the world. And frankly, this reminds me very much of the Noriega operation back in, I guess it was 1989 or the early 90s.
Yeah.
This is just brilliance from our military. What a strong show of force. What a great move from this president. And just what a shocking turn of events. And let me point this out. It was just a few hours ago that the Chinese special envoy for Venezuela was meeting with Maduro. They had no idea what was coming. And so, that this operation could be carried out in secrecy with our great soldiers in Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 or whoever did it, it is a great accomplishment for our military and for this president.
Absolutely. Yet another reason to support and thank our military men and women who are in harm's way, and some were definitely tonight. Let me read you, back in 2020, the original indictment took on Maduro and some top Venezuelan leaders, saying he's not just president of a country, but head of a cartel, the Cartel of the Suns. Maduro has denied that. But at the time, Attorney General William Barr said this: as alleged, Maduro and the other defendants expressly intended to flood the United States with cocaine in order to undermine the health and well-being of our nation. Maduro very deliberately deployed cocaine as a weapon. While Maduro and other cartel members held lofty titles in Venezuela's political and military leadership, the conduct described in the indictment wasn't statecraft or service to the Venezuelan people. It was corrupt Venezuelan institutions to line their pockets with drug money. According to the indictment, Nicolas Maduro is a massive, huge billion-dollar drug boss. And President Trump has taken this astounding action to get him.
Yeah, still on cable.
What? Well, this is just, again, it is a Venezuela under the Maduro and Chavez regime was a criminal enterprise masquerading as a government. And we have to call a spade a spade. That's what this was. And Maduro was flooding our country with drugs. He was killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens over the last few years. But even worse than that, he was trying to flood our country with criminals, with the worst of his society across our southern border to destabilize our country. And the immigration that happened under the Biden administration, where you had gang members, cartel members flooding into our country. I saw it in New York City, where our hotels, parts of our city were occupied. This was a move that had to be done to say enough was enough. And then when you also factor in that Hezbollah and Iran, that Russia, they all had inroads, the Cubans all had inroads into Venezuela. They used Venezuela as a base to do nefarious things to the United States. This has turned, this move by President Trump has turned everything on its head. It's a great day for our country.
Yes, it's amazing how, and you mentioned Hezbollah and, of course, Iran and China and Russia, but let me zero in on Hezbollah and the enemies of our country who have had a foothold in Venezuela, including
Eric, as
Iran
you said, the president
and Russia, thanks to Nicolas Maduro. What does this do geopolitically in terms of their ability to strike at us and or use Venezuela as a launching pad, as they have over the past number of years, now that Maduro is apparently gone?
Well, we cut the head of the snake off. And that means that now Hezbollah will not have sanctuary in Venezuela anymore. You have to believe that the people of Venezuela know that their country in the last generation has gone from being the most prosperous country in Latin America to being one of the poorest. And so I would think the people of Venezuela will be very happy to take control of their destiny and to kick out Hezbollah, to kick out Russia, to kick out the enemies of the United States, because at the end of the day, the United States is a much better ally, can do much more for the people of Venezuela. So I think this is going to be a turning point geopolitically. And I think Hezbollah is going to have to find a new neighborhood to terrorize now because there's a new sheriff in town and it's President Trump. So this is going to be a big victory, a big blow against Hezbollah. But also don't discount what this says to Russia. This says to Russia that President Trump is serious, that Russia can't meddle in our hemisphere. And it also sends a message to Russia that they better be serious about peace in Ukraine, because President Trump has dealt with Venezuela, and the next one he's going to deal with is Ukraine.
I mean, look, Putin lies. Putin does not want peace. Putin wants Ukraine. Can this be used in a way as leverage to maybe change Putin's behavior? Is that even possible?
Absolutely, because I take the example of my grandfather at the height of the Cold War in the 1970s. My grandfather realized that the way to bring peace to Vietnam was not through negotiation, endless negotiation, with draft after draft of agreements that the Russians and the North Vietnamese were never going to agree to. And in 1972, my grandfather mined and bombed Haiphong Harbor. Every expert in the world said, if you do that, you'll start World War III. The Soviets said, if you do that, you'll start World War III. However, within weeks of mining and bombing Haiphong Harbor, where was my grandfather? In Russia signing the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. What happened 6 months later? We had the Paris Peace Accords in January 1973, and our POWs came home. The Russians only understand strength. This move with Maduro will only strengthen President Trump's hand as he negotiates peace in Ukraine.
I want to point out, as the screen says, you're listening to Christopher Cox, who is President Richard M. Nixon's grandson and who has been involved in political affairs himself. His father, chairman of the Republican Party in New York. And you point out that you and your mom, Tricia Nixon Cox, went down to the White House recently and met with President Trump. Do you have a sense, mentioning what you just did, that President Trump has an understanding of history and maybe takes a page in international affairs from your grandfather's playbook in taking this type of action?
Absolutely. President Trump is a very studious, studies history very closely. He understands the importance of history, and he understands the importance of peace through strength. And I think that, he draws on threads from my grandfather, draws on threads from other presidents that he admires, and he is putting into practice this principle of peace through strength. It is really the Trump doctrine, and it is something that is so simple, which is our enemies only understand strength. They only understand the rule of the jungle. Maduro was a thug. We all know that. He worked with cartels. He worked with the worst of this world. And President Trump was willing to stand up and show strength to him. And he understands that this will play with all our adversaries, with all our competitors around the world. Now everyone who opposes the United States, who opposes peace, will have to think twice. And it's all because of President Trump's strength.
Maduro was a thug. So says Christopher Nixon Cox, President Richard Nixon's grandson. Maduro, now perhaps on the USS Gerald Ford, put in handcuffs with his wife, captured by the Trump administration to face justice in a federal courtroom in either Washington, New York, or Miami sometime in the coming weeks under indictment for 5 years for running $1 billion alleged drug narco-terrorist organization. Christopher Cox, Chris, thank you. Thank you for your service to the nation. And thank you for staying up with us tonight here on the Fox News Channel.
There you have it, you guys. This morning, January the 3rd, 2026, Nicolas Maduro has come to an end. We are hearing that he has been captured. Now, as I mentioned to you, I am waiting, along with everybody else, for the live feed to come in here. We are 17 minutes past the hour that we were hearing that it was supposed to go live. So, you know, typically it could take as much as a half an hour or so, usually, for them to get everything all set up. So I'm just watching the live feed, waiting for it to come in, and I am pulling up new video footage that's coming up so that way you guys can see what is coming out on this. But I'm going to hang out with you guys here, and because any moment now we're hearing that the White House is going to have an address. I believe Trump's at Mar-a-Lago, and he's going to be addressing what has unfolded this morning as he has taken Maduro, the president, the dictator of Venezuela. We're seeing the responses from China, from Russia, saying that they disapprove. They're calling on the United Nations to get involved. Trump is saying that they don't consider Maduro the actual president of Venezuela, that the elections were stolen, that he's a dictator and he's doing whatever he wants. We saw the video footage coming out of him driving in a van. Some people were saying it looked like maybe it was AI. I laughed because it just didn't seem real, that it was a president driving in a van, recording himself on his phone, asking for an agreement, saying if you want to do a negotiation with our oil, we can go ahead and do that. When Trump has been telling them for so long now, since he's been in office, hey, this needs to end. You need to stop the drug trafficking. We believe that you're the head of this. And at the last moment, he's trying to peddle some sort of an agreement. It just was just absurd. It's ridiculous. I couldn't help but laugh. But let's take a look at some more of the video footage. I'm going to keep my eye on the live feed so that way when it hits, we're hearing from Donald Trump. I'm going to bring it up so we can hear the address directly from him. But let's take a look at some more video footage as this one coming out from Fox News says Venezuela responds to the U.S. capture of Maduro imperialistic. Let's take a look.
Eric, as you said, the president posting on Truth Social. We now have that for our viewers to look at on the screen. There it is. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today, 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump, unprecedented action in Venezuela overnight. Let's talk more about it with Fox News correspondent Lucas Thomason, who's there in West Palm Beach, Florida. Lucas.
Well, Shanley, good morning. When we saw the videos of U.S. military helicopters, likely from the 160th Special Operations Regiment, the Night Stalkers, the most elite pilots in the world, we knew that U.S. ground forces could be involved in some kind of snatch and grab operation. Now we have it confirmed from President Trump that Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been snatched under the cover of darkness, under airstrikes throughout Caracas, as well as their major port in the north of Caracas. That this operation was in some ways a law enforcement operation to grab Maduro and his wife because of the charges against him. Recall, there's a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head. We just heard Maduro a day ago almost pleading with President Trump that he wanted to make a deal. But we heard from President Trump for weeks now, over a dozen times, he pledged there would be strikes on land. And when it comes to an operation like this, our viewers might be wondering, where did these helicopters come from? Well, you have a number of flat tops in the region. You have the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. You also have the USS Iwo Jima, which is an amphibious assault ship. Doesn't have catapults to launch jets like an aircraft carrier, but does carry dozens of helicopters. Could have been used as a launching pad. Remember, you also saw a converted freighter called the Ocean Trader off the coast of Venezuela, and some of these special operations helicopters flying almost show of force missions, almost a rehearsal for what we saw tonight. And this is not without precedent. In 1989, the U.S. Army parachuted in and seized Manuel Noriega from Panama in 1989, if you remember, and to also carry out with the U.S. military a law enforcement operation. And that's what President Trump said in that post. He said there will be a press conference at 11 a.m. this morning to discuss this with the world and the American public. We have seen unprecedented strikes from the United States in Venezuela early this morning, beginning at about 1 a.m. Eastern, about 2 o'clock a.m. local in Caracas, after this large-scale military buildup we've been seeing from weeks, really going back to September, with the droning of those drug boats in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. We've also seen squadrons of F-35 stealth fighter jets from the U.S. Air Force landing in Puerto Rico, the F-35 Bravo version from the Marine Corps. We've seen Iwo Jima. We've seen Gerald Ford conducting flight operations. We've also seen those KC-135 refueling birds landing in places like the Dominican Republic. We saw from people going on vacation, firing off posts showing those refueling planes on the ground. So I spoke to Elliot Abrams, President Trump's former U.S. Special Envoy to Venezuela, just a few weeks ago down in Trinidad, and he said that this was a showdown between President Trump and Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, and there could only be one winner, and President Trump doesn't like to lose. And you knew that with this large-scale buildup, it likely would not be drawn down until something like this happened. And this has been in the works for days. We were told, however, you had the strike against ISIS in Nigeria on Christmas Day. For the past few days, we've been getting some signs this could be underway, the planning of the operation. But early this morning, we got word of those large-scale strikes. And you saw the video, thanks to the iPhone and social media, we saw these U.S. Army helicopters under the cover of darkness flying low. We saw Apache gunships. We saw likely H-1 Viper Marine Corps attack helicopters, likely from Iwo Jima or some of the other amphibious warships in the Caribbean. Recall, there's about a dozen U.S. warships in the Caribbean on station. And when we saw these attack helicopters striking targets at very close range, notice there wasn't any return fire that we saw on social media from the Venezuelans. It's likely that the U.S. military had disabled Venezuela's air defense systems, its radar. There are a number of aircraft that could have made that happen. The EA-18 Growlers aboard the Gerald Ford. You also had a squadron of those Growlers deployed from their home base in Whidbey Island in Washington to Puerto Rico. There's just a large-scale buildup. We're seeing the fruition of that earlier this morning with the seizing of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. And it has been not without precedent, though. Remember, in 1989 with the seizing of Manuel Noriega in Panama, Chandler.
Driven by a passion for dogs and with a commitment to safeguard.
Lining the immense power of the U.S. military, not only there in Venezuela, but in the region leading up to this. You have military experience, of course, yourself. You know what you're talking about. Speak about the intelligence that went into pinpointing the location of the Venezuelan president, who likely was asleep. It was 2 a.m., right, in the middle of the night, there with his wife. Now, you mentioned he's under indictment here in the U.S. with the DOJ now in their possession. Are you surprised they also took his wife?
Well, she was likely in the room with Maduro. That is why they seized her. These were likely Tier 1 Special Operations Forces, the Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, who would have gone in. We can't confirm those units. Would have gone in and grabbed Maduro and his wife. If his wife was there, they probably would have grabbed her too. But you're spot on pointing out the intelligence. There probably only a certain number of compounds where Maduro would reside. He has spoken in the past about bunkers he has used, but there's no question he is heavily defended. We've heard about not just his security forces, but also Cuban security forces that have been closely guarding him for weeks. But perhaps to tip off this operation, that interview with Maduro yesterday, you could almost hear in his voice he was pleading for the Trump administration. He wanted a deal. He wanted to get American oil companies back in Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, even larger than Saudi Arabia. We've seen the seizing of those oil tankers off the coast of Venezuela that the Trump administration has sanctioned and says they're part of the shadow fleet. We've seen Coast Guard Special Operations Forces fast roping aboard some of those tankers and seizing them. One is at anchor in Galveston, right there off the coast of Texas. This has been a tightening of the noose, if you will, of Maduro. Really a daring operation tonight from U.S. Special Operations Forces to seize Maduro and his wife and to know where he is.
Right. President Trump, again, already touting the success of this mission. Let's talk about what we've heard from the Venezuelan government so far. I know you've read the statement that they put out. We're also hearing from the Venezuela defense minister saying that they're compiling information about the dead and injured in the U.S. attack. You know more about the locations that were struck, and would you expect that there would be the collateral damage that Venezuelan government is trying to compile?
And it could have been part of a diversion as well. With these major bases in Caracas, two of them that were struck, their large-scale military base as well as the air base, as well as their largest port just north of Caracas were struck. Also, Hugo Chavez's mausoleum was reportedly struck in the airstrikes. No question to sow confusion among the Venezuelan forces, to distract them. Also, again, can't be emphasized enough, we did not see any surface-to-air missiles launched from the Venezuelan forces, any AAA anti-aircraft fire. The only fire that we have seen on social media came from U.S. aircraft flying overhead.
I'm Steve Ducey.
All right, guys, so we are just moments away, I believe, from the president addressing the nation. You can see we've got right here the setup on the live feed. This is coming in from Fox News. Trump is going to be addressing the capture of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. So any moment now. It was scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's very typical for it to be 30 minutes or so late. So my guess is maybe in the next couple of minutes. Hopefully it's not 60 minutes late. But we actually see the feed up right now, and we're hearing people kind of moving around in the background, getting ready to go live here, hopefully any moment. So I've got that pulled up, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. We're hearing that other nations are getting very concerned about what they've seen, and I actually see a video that just came up from Fox News right now saying that the sights are now set on Mexico. Let me know, do you like the sound of that? If so, put yes. If no, put no. We had heard that there might be other nations now that the Trump administration might be addressing. We've already seen that China and Russia have responded, saying they condemn the actions of the overthrow of the president of Venezuela. Trump saying that he considered him a dictator. Didn't even consider him the president of Venezuela. So we're seeing other nations now getting concerned with what is unfolding. Let me know, do you like the sound of President Trump setting his focus on Mexico? Put yes or no in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, and drop a like if you haven't done so yet. I see we got about 1,300 people on with me live. We are hopefully moments away from President Trump addressing the nation on this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's just go ahead and pull this up here. I hear people speaking in the background, but I think it's just the cameramen just getting ready. So we'll see. It is now 10:30. So hopefully here very soon we'll see that hit. What I'm going to go ahead and do is leave the volume on, so that way if they start speaking, I'm going to go ahead and have it ready. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this video footage coming in addressing Mexico. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I've got the live feed ready, so if we've got to cut over to the live feed, we'll do so. But let's take a look at what they're saying about Mexico right now.
I wonder, Mr. President, I want to ask you, because from your Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that the message is pretty clear. The drug trafficking must stop. So was this operation a message that you're sending to Mexico, to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president there?
Well, it wasn't meant to be, and we're very friendly with her. She's a good woman, but the cartels are running Mexico. She's not running Mexico. The cartels are running Mexico. And we could be politically correct and be nice and say, oh, yes, she is. No, she's very, she's very frightened of the cartels. They're running Mexico. And I've asked her numerous times, Would you like us to take out the cartels? No, 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 Mr. President. No, 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 please. So we have to do something because we lost. The real number is 300,000 people, in my opinion. You know, they like to say 100,000. 100,000 is a lot of people, but the real number is 300,000 people. And we lost it to drugs, and they come in through the southern border, mostly the southern border. Plenty come in through Canada, too, by the way, in case you don't know. Yeah. But they come in through the southern border, and something's going to have to be done with Mexico.
Why did you decide to do this morning?
Are you talking about calling you people or the shot?
No, taking out Maduro.
I'm not sure which is worse, if you want to know the truth. I'm calling you. I haven't spoken to anybody else because Charlie Hurd has been a great friend of mine for a long time. He was with me when it was not fashionable. And those are the people I like. He was with me, Charlie, when it was not at all fashionable. So that's the reason I'm doing this. And your show is great. You're doing a great job. What a good team.
But I meant, why did you make the decision to take out Maduro this morning? And what was Maduro doing when our guys came in on him?
So we were going to do this 4 days ago, but the weather was not perfect. The weather has to be perfect. And we had just the perfect weather. We had, very good. A little bit few more clouds than we thought, but it was good. We waited 4 days. We were going to do this 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago. And then all of a sudden it opened up and we said go. And I'll tell you, it was just amazing. And what was he doing? He was in a very highly guarded, like a fortress, actually. He was in a fortress. That we had nobody killed was amazing. I think we had nobody killed, I have to say, because a couple of guys were hit, but they came back and they're supposed to be in pretty good shape. But that we had nobody killed, that we lost no aircraft. Everything came back. We got it all back. One of them was hit pretty hard, but a helicopter, but we got it back. But it just was the right time to do it. We had to do it because it's a war. We're losing 300,000 people a year. We don't lose that much in a war. Okay, if you look. And we had to do it. But he was in a house that was more like a fortress than a house. It had steel doors. It had what they call a safety space where it's, solid steel all around. He didn't get that space closed. He was trying to get into it, but he got bum rushed so fast that he didn't get into that. We were prepared. We had, massive blowtorches and everything else that you need to get through that steel, but we didn't need it. He didn't make it to that area of the house.
Mr. President, your war on narcoterrorism from our southern border and beyond clearly will save American lives. Moving forward for Venezuela, what do you think is next for the Venezuelan people now that you have removed Maduro so that he can face American justice?
Well, we're making that decision now. We can't take a chance on letting somebody else run and just take over where he left off. So we're making that decision now. We'll be involved in it very much. And we want to do liberty for the people. We want to, have a great relationship. I think the people of Venezuela are very, very happy because they love the United States. They were run by essentially a dictatorship or worse. It couldn't have been worse. It was a terrible thing that was taking place in Venezuela. But look, tremendous numbers of people were being killed through drugs. And what they did to our country in sending prisoners
you live in a world
and people from mental institutions and drug lords and everything. They sent them by the hundreds of thousands of people into our country. And that is just unforgivable. That's why, he wanted to negotiate at the end, and I didn't want to negotiate. I said, nope, we got to do it. He was trying to negotiate at the end. You probably saw that. And trying hard to make a deal. And I said, and, this could have been a very foolish thing if it didn't work out. But I said, nope, we can't do it. What he did with drugs is bad. What he did with a lot of other things is bad. But what he did was sending hundreds of thousands of Tren de Aragua and drug dealers. And they emptied out their jails into our country. They emptied out, if you think about it, they emptied out all of their mental institutions into our country. What he did there, and every other thing, is unforgivable.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagna.
There you have it, you guys. That was the President of the United States, Donald Trump, earlier this morning discussing Mexico, Sheinbaum, and saying, hey, they need to be addressed as well. He said this was not a message to them. He was like, but maybe they're going to get the hint here as well with the concerns of the drugs pouring into the United States from the southern border. He also said it comes in from the northern border as well, but most of it coming in from the south. Now, also, as you guys know, we heard that at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so about 36 minutes ago, we were supposed to begin the press briefing that was going to be coming out from Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago home, and we have that up right now. I am waiting here to see when that goes live. We are now 37 minutes past due. Like I said, it's not unusual for these things to be 30 minutes, maybe even 60 minutes late. So hopefully any moment now, we're going to see Donald Trump come out and address the nation regarding this. But in the meantime, I am still pulling up live feeds. I'm pulling up information pouring in today. Historic, as the United States has overthrown the Maduro regime. We heard that he went into Venezuela, that the United States, they went in, captured him and his wife, and they currently have them in custody here in the United States, and Donald Trump is going to be addressing the nation on this. Now, let's take a look at some more video clips pouring in, so that way you can get more updates as to what has unfolded this morning as we await the president's address here, which hopefully will be coming on any moment now. But let's take a look at some more video footage, keeping you up to speed on everything.
Supporters of Maduro live in the streets there. This is a live look coming out of Venezuela. For our viewers just tuning in, Venezuela's government did respond to this attack with a call to action. They said, people to the streets. The government calls on all social and political forces in the country to activate mobilization plans, calling this an imperialist attack. My question for you, Michael, what comes next here?
You know, it's difficult to say, though. So because you do have, apparently, in the military leadership, unfortunately, a regime holding power, even though they lost the election. They're not the legitimate government. It is hard to say what comes next. Now, if this does lead to a transition, which unfortunately might not, but let's hope that it does, then this has been incredibly successful. And in fact, this kind of shows what could have been a far safer approach in Iraq, where we took out Saddam Hussein, we captured him, even killed him if necessary, like with bin Laden, because, we were more in an active war with Saddam Hussein's forces than, in this case with Maduro. But it's hard to say what's going to come next. We don't...
Okay, thank you very much. This is big stuff. We appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea. We're just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now they're on a ship. They'll be heading to ultimately New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they call police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives, they walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard, I want to thank our military, and I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana, and we have done that. It was a rough rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, then crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungary, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into...
How long it takes a beginner like my dad to go from beer belly to get ripped again.
Nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation. This morning, it's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can you explain how the U.S. will run Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the President said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve. The most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026, and under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Raisin Kane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings, but when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the President ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire Joint Force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the President said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up, and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
we should make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this, we're going to take... This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody. But don't play games. don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba?
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President,
does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you explain the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
It's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
Mr. President, what's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be...
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that.
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We called members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. but it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
If I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
Mr. President, you were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. The safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
So where is Maduro going to be?
Go ahead, finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact whereabouts?
Well, eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you? How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want the Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. We're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to oil?
China,
give yourself 28 days and become the most dangerous person in the room. Let's be real. Most people over 40.
But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to do it. In other words, we'll be selling oil. Probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that?
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly when you look at the border from 2020. What they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we wouldn't have. We would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military
They're going
troops
to be
to
a
provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay, and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, what is being done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans
Well, right now they're
arrested
very
last
protected
week?
because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago.
And what can you
Okay,
say
wait,
about
behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So, suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems that Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Are you cutting off the oil flow to Cuba from Venezuela?
Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's an
The answer is yes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Is the U.S. aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. Really, no, we haven't.
Mr. President, how many hesitations about Machado?
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything.
So the U.S. isn't going to dedicate
we will.
money to.
Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well, I don't want to get into the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
Mr. President, can you explain, you said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
Mr. President, you referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
No, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless
President.
it's a bad question, in
It's
which
about
case
Putin.
I'll go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin? Well, that's always nice.
You had a
to talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him
Yeah.
on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
There was that
I
intelligence.
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace. So I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions, we send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25,000, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess, it's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
Concerned a rogue Venezuelan general to take over the country.
Can you talk about your conversation with the vice president?
There you have it, you guys. So that was President Donald Trump just today. That was live January 3rd, 2026. It's currently 11:37 a.m. Central Standard Time here in Houston, Texas, and we are hearing that President Donald Trump, he has captured Maduro, the president of Venezuela, the dictator. He is now on his way to New York, we're hearing, where he is going to be tried. And you heard Donald Trump say it live, that the United States is now going to be in charge in Venezuela. There's going to be a team that's going to be operating to try to get things back on track until they get somebody in place that they said will be somebody that the United States feels like will be a friendly nation leader. And we're also hearing that he said, what are they going to be doing with the oil? He said, we're going to be using that to help pay for the group that's going to be helping control control Venezuela from the United States. So a lot of answers and breaking news coming out today. We've heard that China and Russia are responding, saying they are very upset with what has unfolded. Russia actually calling on the UN to get involved, saying that this was crimes. We're hearing that Congress is concerned they were not involved, yet Trump said, why would I tell Congress? All they do is tell the secrets. They'll leak the information, and we needed this to be very precise and secretive, so that way nothing got out. He said if we would have told Congress, they probably would have leaked the information and the results would have been different than us actually capturing Maduro. So there you have it, you guys. Man, breaking news coming out today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate Donald Trump, drop a 47. If you don't, drop a 46 for the previous administration. Hit that like button if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to stay up to date, and I will keep you up to speed as more comes out. But we've been live for almost 3 hours now this morning, Saturday, January 3rd, 2026, on the breaking news of the capture of Venezuelan President Maduro by Donald Trump. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.